Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this round 5 of the Columbus OP Cup. We have a very special match coming in round 5 for you here, as we have Joe, the commentator, LRG CEO at the top of your screen, playing Asclepion, Cthulhu, Dark Beast, Mr. Fantastic, and the Time Traveler, of course, with a little Hell's Kitchen support. Then, of course, at the bottom, we have Nick rocking that beautiful Joan of Arc, Wicked Witch, Scarlet Witch, Doctor Strange, 221 Baker, and of course, trying to come with a little something different on the side with the Daily Bugle. This is going to be a great match. Of course, I have Tyler with me providing all the strategy insights that you may need throughout this game. Hello, Tyler.
Hey everybody. Yeah, we got an interesting one. We got the executive on the top end, and we've got a relative of mine, Nick, my cousin at the on the bottom. And it looks like Nick has the event. No strength power cards maybe played this battle, which doesn't look like it's gonna do a whole lot to Joe. So it looks like we're gonna get some standard placing here, and I think both decks are actually fairly evenly matched. I think this is gonna be a good matchup.
And of course, in the first hand, you are seeing no discards, so they are playing an even round here. Now, of course, as Nick looks across the table, he is seeing some lower attacks on Joe's side of the board there. I believe he does see, actually, as well, very low attacks, to be honest. I believe that's a 2 and a 3 on Joe's side, plus a very straightforward acrobatics for Dark Beast that he has placed. Nick opting for the place and run, trying to gain advantage through the war chest. Now, interesting as he saw both two intellect attacks on the other side. I didn't really think Joe had much there that he really could have came at him with, but Nick opting for the war chest and the move forward. What do you think about that tie in the first round?
I think that might have been a bit rushed, and I think especially when you see him dupe the two cards now. I mean, that is somewhat luck. But I think that when you have the Doctor Strange card and the Witch Negate not playing one of those, at least trying to, in a situation where you can take advantage, because you can easily work around the acrobatics. And even if you force him to play that in the first round and still only venture one, I think there's worse outcomes to have, unless I don't think he's main decking multiples of those, or a lot of them if he is.
I definitely feel with the large cards on Nick's side that he truly could have had that first round, especially being a card up. I think he just really didn't want the KO pressure.
Yeah.
And playing Wicked Witch myself, you almost fall into this weird tendency of not really wanting to play until you see Harness the Wind in your hand.
Yeah, that could be the case, and that might be one of the issues. And the Daily Bugle also is very limited, like defensive cards, so he may not want to get into a spot where he's got to use those for low ventures.
Now, of course, looking across the table, he didn't really see much spectrum being shown by his opponent. Now, it looks like he's trying to make his way back in the game. Looks like he's willing to push 2 in this round to try to sort of bring himself back to an even kilter.
I mean, I still don't see a lot of spectrum on the other side of the table either, and it looks like those are some pretty... If Joe's deck has... I mean, a lot of times when you see clustered cards like this could be just the variance, or it could also just be some aspect of the deck design that you can expose. So I tend to like to gamble a bit and take hits like this. So in this case, when I see those low energy power cards plus the high ones, I would probably take energy as a secondary stat, or at least intellect, because you know if he's got multiple low intellect power cards along with high ones, that they're not going to contribute to cumulative KO at all.
And of course, we did just see an ally played out there, defended by a 1-6. And then, of course, Mr. Fantastic providing the Python hold, locking down the Wicked Witch from attacking. Ally back from Nick, and Angelic Vision. Very great card. Joe did not get out his Stars and Garters, so that won't be avoided by that, but he did have the negate in hand. Of course, also having Hell's Kitchen, a lot of avoid action there. Joe realizing he needs to get that out quickly. Nick not allowing the Stars and Garters defense to come into play.
Snap negate on that Stars and Garters, that's a bit surprising to me. I might have considered the Python hold still.
And if you were considering to do that, I wonder why you just didn't consider to do that in the first round.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think I would have probably held off at least and considered, now that he's played his Beast Negate, I may have considered to negate either, but maybe paste it out with a turn or two later and decide which one's going to be the bigger hindrance.
Teamwork thrown, blocked, power card follow-up. Joe looking through his battle site, using skeletal summonings. I believe he placed it on the Time Traveler, so it should be going through the Time Traveler. That is how you're supposed to play those cards. Now, I think he may actually be going for the Mr. Fantastic Draw 3. And, of course, we can't hear the audio of who he claimed the card was played through.
I think he has to fetch a Time Traveler card, though. I think he's fetching the discard 3 plays cards. That would be really nasty right now.
Really big moment here, especially knowing Nick just used his one negate from his team and does not have one in his site. Very huge card. Let's see if Joe thought that deep about his strategy.
I mean, this is also a great bluffing opportunity, too. If I were Joe and I felt like I could put the battle away, I would just grab maybe a Time Traveler 6 and hope that he concedes thinking it's the other one. And then as long as you do grab the other one a few times, you could really put him in a blender here.
Teamwork from Nick, trying to cumulative through Fantastic. Of course, being defended there on the last attack. And there's the Time Traveler card.
It looks like the discard
was correct.
Wow.
Now, of course, Nick very smartly got the card off of Joan of Arc, obviously thinking that could have been a possibility that Joe drew.
I still think that's bad enough situation because of the fact that he could still very likely lose this venture and end up with a placing disadvantage. Oh, that's the Cthulhu Bodyguard.
Big 7 energy. Of course, Cthulhu Bodyguard getting placed in front of Mr. Fantastic. That little speed bump that Nick now has to go through. Opting not to go through it with his power card.
Yeah, I think he thinks he needs it for venture, but if Joe's out of cards, I think this is pretty locked in. I don't know how many cards left. Joe only had 1 card left. Why did he concede? I guess he was worried about a kill shot, but this is exactly what I was getting at as far as exposing deck construction, where when you see low intellect power cards, you have to ask yourself how many are in there, because there's too much energy intellect clustered into that hand where there was no KO pressure there, and you have to pay attention to what your opponent's playing.
I think Nick was a little bit weary seeing that power card placed across the board on the Time Traveler. One card in Joe's hand. He could have just had a light 4 make an additional for the kill on Joan of Arc. Of course, Nick playing uber tight right now, not really gambling, not really taking much shots across the board, trying to really just play a smart game, looking for that mid to late game advantage that will hopefully swing this game back his way. Now Joe catching up on all the placement here, and of course winning those 2 ventures. Joe really sitting in a decent position right now in this mid game.
Yeah, and I mean, he still has the draw 3 in the deck. I'm assuming he still has the draw 3 in Hell's Kitchen. That event, I believe, is the one that gives you a bonus every time you heal a character, which he just played. And now, is he running a Sleepion? Yeah,
he
okay,
is.
That makes a lot of sense. I do like that card from Beast, and that makes the acrobatics make a lot more sense when you're running those.
So very smart play. Joe is playing Asclepion, which by removing that hit, he was allowed to draw a card and, of course, attack with the character that removed the hit as well. Opting not to, holding it in his hand.
And the event gave him a venture bonus, so it was a +3 or +2 for the heal as well.
As you can see, Nick just slowly retreating back, looking for his hand to try to get back into this game. We are in battle 4, and I can say this battle might be for Nick's game here. I think Nick really has to turn it around, especially in this battle. Now, I'm assuming he was hunting for that Harness the Wind. Has he got it?
I mean, this is a key hand. This has less to do with the amount people venture and all about momentum and breaking the momentum. You have to play this like your game depends on it right now.
As you can see, Joe just venturing 1. Nick also just venturing 1, but realizing there's more to this battle than just the ventures that were placed. Ally comes out. Cthulhu -5 to the whole team. Follow up in the astral plane that will remain there for the remainder of the game, even if Cthulhu is KO'd.
Now that's a pretty good card for Nick at this point. I don't think that matters that much. And again, I think this is the idea behind Joe playing those low power cards, is that he's hoping people will take them, thinking they don't do much, getting them to 15 points, and then getting surprised by the Cthulhu card. As much as I think that does play into the card, I don't think that's worth the trade-off deck-wise. Like, I think you're still better off with low spectrum cards, and like the numbers stay the same regardless. So
Scorpion Activator,
I'd
looking
rather
at either a 7 combat attack or potentially a 5 energy attack.
he could also be using Mac Gargan as his OPD.
As you can see, Joe very smartly placing that Cthulhu bodyguard out there. And of course, it looks like Nick is actually buying what Joe is selling and no longer trying to attempt to go through Mr. Fantastic, giving Joe a great 1-9 avoid there.
And the way to break through those is to use your allies or your chains, your low cards, to pop those off, and then to get your turn back by using the cards that normally get you extra pacing.
Now, of course, those are undefendable. However, you may still shift away from those.
Yep. You can also negate certain specials because it says that the cards can't be defended, so it's anything that's classified as a standard defense.
Energy teamwork across the board from Nick. Looking for a follow-up here. Looking for the KO shot. Joe smartly playing. Oh, he will have the double lock off here. That is no universe cards.
Now, was that a 2 that Nick played? See, I would have played that 2 to get rid of that body card, because I think he needs the KO pressure at this point.
He truly is just letting that card protect Mr. Fantastic, which I think is exactly what Joe was trying to do. Now, teamwork following the other way. Big follow-up there off the teamwork. That is a 9. Using Scarlet Spider, one of the most beautiful cards out of Power Surge. And I believe he's going to use a teammate avoid here.
Yep. Good old Hillshire Farms, but that would be a proxy. Definitely not the Hillshire Farms version, so don't open your Lunchables thinking you're going to find a blue bordered card.
And if you still have a Lunchable, do not eat the contents of that Lunchable when you do open it for the cards.
I was going to say the meat in the Lunchable might be blue as well, if you still have one.
So there you go. He's using the 4 to get rid of the initial speed bump on Mr. Fantastic. Now, applying his attacks back to Mr. Fantastic, understanding that he probably should have just done that the whole time. Joe realizing that he's not going to have much to defend Mr. Fantastic, still having a few big specials in there, opting to run away. Big move for Nick. He really needed that round. Now, of course, going forward, Nick having 3 cards to Joe's 3 cards that are playable as well. Of course, the acrobatics just sitting there ready to protect the beast.
Now, the other thing that I'll give you guys a little bit of a tip, I really don't like playing any power teamwork against a card that is 4 or less as a follow-up hit. Like if you look at Mr. Fantastic right now, I think that 6 any power teamwork does a lot more on Time Traveler, where now an 8 would KO him in 3 cards. It's really about like trying to make sure the most efficient way to kill a character on average is 3 cards. So I like putting the any power on one character and the low spectrum stuff on a different one, because you never want to get it to the point where your any power causes you to have to play a 4th or 5th card to KO a character.
And of course, there's that big draw 3 we were just discussing. Reason Joe probably conceded the last round, trying to play towards his bigger cards. Now, this is a pivotal moment for Nick.
And he does have Harness the Wind, it looks like there.
Nick holding 11 cards total.
And is that the Time Traveler negate that for the event that's in the Astral Plane with the Cthulhu card?
No, that is actually, Joe played that last round. That is the Time Traveler 10 to venture.
Yeah, that's the venture.
He must discard 1 intelligence power card towards it to gain that advantage. Angelic Vision's played, looking to reveal Joe's hand, negates it, not allowing that information to go towards Nick. Now playing Time Traveler card.
I think that's the remove 1 hit from the permanent record.
Remove 1 hit from the permanent record of a teammate.
Yeah.
Again, drawing for Asclepion.
I think Asclepion is such an amazing home base, and I think people are really sleeping on that. And I think that the ability to remove is such a powerful effect, and being able to draw multiple cards in one hand.
Low energy coming across the table. Looks like Nick is deciding now, am I going to start defending this with bigger cards, or am I going to activate Harness the Wind for this round? Activating Harness the Wind, now moving cards around. This being a pivotal round for Nick. If you activate Harness the Wind, you're not doing it on...
I think he's discarding that draw 3. Yeah, that's great.
Using a great Black Cat special.
That would be a great equalizer at this point and take him out of the woods as far as someone.
Considering Joe has used his 1 negate already from his team, he does not have one from Hell's Kitchen.
I think knowing that I had those cards, I might have considered venturing 3 if I were Nick. He might be a little gun-shy just because of the way the momentum has shifted this game, but I think he had enough with that discard that he had to know he couldn't negate the Vertigo and protect the draw 3. And I think the Vertigo or the Harness the Wind would have been enough to win it, even if he did play the draw 3.
I think in a scenario, if Nick was looking across the board, the Beast Negate was placed, or the Dark Beast Negate was placed. So I think Nick was just probably not fully going deep to 5-6 plays later. He was just thinking that Negate can stop one of the things I'm trying to do. Now, of course, Nick getting everything he wants right now in this round. Playing an Activator, Scorpion, 5, if successful, -2 to defense for remainder of battle.
I'm also curious, like that playing that low power card as an attack from Joe makes me think that he doesn't have any follow-ups, because he could have used that to give himself the venture bump, which probably would have been more effective.
Now, of course, seeing the intelligence teamwork playable by Cthulhu in reserve. Now, of course, that power card was not playable off it, as they were both intelligence attacks. Another intelligence attack coming right off the bat as well. Again, not playable with that teamwork, which thus should tell Nick that teamwork is probably going to fall as unplayable.
Yes, and I think that would be my cue to immediately start taking blue. I just think there's way too much low blue. I think you need some to help fuel those cards, but a lot of these can be done with multis and other things like that, and even any power. But this low blue stuff, I think, combined with the high stuff, is going to be a problem.
Now, of course, Nick moving attacks around. He did now have to put 2 intelligence attacks on different characters. Now, Joe's starting to really spread the board, and one thing you have to remember in this board is Joe does have in the astral plane the Cthulhu card, saying if any of Nick's characters get to that 15 threshold, they will be KO'd immediately.
Yeah, and I think this is the big difference, is that as much as Joe was feeling KO pressure earlier, this is where Sleepyon, I think, has really helped him out long term, where Nick's had to take damage and it's had to stay there, whereas Joe's been able to actually heal his characters off, and you're seeing that it looks like Joe's made more progress, even though it was technically Nick that's been able to distribute more KO pressure.
Early Feminist Leader, a +2 now to combat as well as intelligence actions, allowing that power card to block higher, using that ally to great advantage, getting rid of Beast, not being able to use that acrobatics through. Now that was a 5.
And that makes his Witch 8 a 10 as well, right?
And now that 7 is also a 9 follow-up as well, coming into Cthulhu.
Does that actually force the reserve?
And of course, that will state that Cthulhu will not be able to enter battle next round. I think that's the first time I've actually seen that special played to proper fruition in the exact round it almost needs to be played. Yeah. Fantastic play, Nick.
Yeah, I think that might be the first and one of the only times I've seen that. Like, that's pretty crazy.
And Joe pulling another negate from his Asclepion draw.
See, this is kind of what I was explaining as far as why Asclepion has a unique capability and why being able to draw multiple cards in one battle is so huge, because you never know if he did draw another negate or a second copy of a card that you thought you already kind of dealt with.
Now, Nick, of course, truly praying that Harness the Wind will stay on the board. However, that is just a for-the-round card and will be discarded momentarily. Nick, though, getting a really big kill there, or KO, on the Beast, could potentially start to sway this game back in his advantage. Of course, also locking Cthulhu back there, not allowing that 11 to enter this battle. Very intriguing round. Great use of a new ERB card.
Yeah, I'm curious.
2 Green Goblins. Looking like he drew all 3 of his Green Goblin activators in the same round. Not a very good thing to do, as I am assuming he's trying to bump as well as get access to that Green Goblin search card.
So that event is the one where a character gets +2 to all actions, but if you choose to give them that, they lose 4 points on their hit points. They lose 4 cumulative KO points. So I think Joe's idea is with the Cthulhu card in play, he gets it for free. I mean, he'd still get the -4, but again, if he's got a bodyguard or something like that on the character, I think it's probably a good event to use.
Which, as you can see, an actual bodyguard from Kingpin there placed in front of Mr. Fantastic. So Joe's speed bump sort of approach here to his deck. Now, interesting round as he ventured to. He clearly had the advantage going into this round. Now, he is looking at a very good chance to actually really pull ahead in this game. Now, I think Nick looking for a few of those discards from the Dark Beast to potentially get him back into a card advantage situation. Looking like he's not discarding anything. Oh, discarding an 8 energy, of course, losing the drop kick on the other side. Joe also placing an artifact, which could come big in the end game.
Wow.
However, right now, not actually providing much in terms of venture. Also placing down a 4 energy, a 3 on the ally combat, so not too many large hits. Now, on Nick's side, placing a multi-8, 2 teamworks, showing the follow-ups for both of them, and of course a 1-6 and negate. Nick providing a lot on his side of the board. Of course, remembering that EFL is in play, giving a +2 bonus. It looks like Joe is not daunted and pressing right at him, applying the pressure that I think Joe really needs to at this point in the game.
Yeah, that 11 is devastating when you have the Cthulhu card in play because it doesn't take much to kill a character with 2 cards. I love that Joe's main decking that Infinity Gauntlet. That's, I think, one of the most underestimated artifact cards, and as a late game play, that thing can be really, really gross.
And you can completely understand, especially with his Asclepion style builds, and he would just draw back Dark Beast and remove a hit, and there'd just be a lot of play that he could get with that gauntlet. Now, of course, again, not providing anything at the moment, however, big if it gets into play for a later part of this game. Which is exactly what Nick would dread, as he probably needs several more battle wins to truly win this game.
Yeah, what's great about the card is that whenever you have a special card placed to your home base, or a card like the Time Traveler card in play, being able to resurrect a character, but knowing that you always have something extra playable that's there that makes it worth 5 cards, especially towards Power Pack, makes it a very interesting late game play.
Now, of course, Nick using that protection of St. Michael, stating that Joan of Arc blocks a combat attack and no intelligence attacks may continue through Joan of Arc.
It is interesting, though, when you look at, had Nick started taking the blue and the yellow early on, like that teamwork almost does nothing. And he could have taken almost the entire teamwork, even including a low hit of 1, and outside of the Cthulhu card making a slight difference. I mean, that's a lot of damage that's just easy to take.
So, as you see, Nick playing an amazing play there, using the BQ Scarlet Spider special from his site to defensively reactivate Harness the Wind, thus giving him 2 great shots at it throughout this game. Now, of course, with that Cthulhu card just daunting there, Nick is not going to have a lot of wiggle room on his characters here. As you can see, he can't even move either of those energy hits over to the Witch, as it would KO her. Nick's starting to really find a fine, tight line in this game, and his back is starting to get against the wall. Can Joe keep applying pressure to finish this off? Nick pushing across the board, trying to just get something to fall his way.
Is this the 9 or less then? Because I believe he already played the No Universe.
He has already played No Universe. It must be a 1-9 unless he's also playing just the straight avoid. We will find out Joe's action here. Realizing he's already played the No Universe. Character being KO'd. Interesting, I am curious what he is running as the AD special out of that site if he didn't have the Daredevil 1-9.
So the option that a lot of people will choose is the Ghost Rider Avoid Energy Combat because it's a defensive card for him.
So he actually did have the Daredevil Avoid, but opted not to use it, allowing the Time Traveler to be KO'd and saving that Avoid for a follow-up.
Okay. I mean, wasn't there a place card on Time Traveler? I thought there was. Okay.
And of course here, playing out Snake Marsden. No, only universe attacks. So again, locking off a pivotal character, forcing Nick now to go through that bodyguard speed bump. Now, of course, Nick pointing out St. Michael, saying you may not play that intelligence icon attack at me, or intelligence attack, because of the secondary text on protection of St. Michael. Very smart, Nick. That's how you stay focused in a tournament and pay attention to both your cards and your opponent's cards. Yep. Great play there. As you can see, Joe realizing very quickly he has to concede that round, giving it to Nick.
It's a very good game right now. It's interesting. It's a very good back and forth. It was a little slow on Nick's side early on, but I think the Scarlet Spider Arachne Gizmos is a great choice for OPD. And that Infinity Gauntlet, yeah, is going to make a very big difference on Joe's end of things too. So Nick's got most of his team still intact, but that Infinity Gauntlet, it makes Joe's side look deceivingly weaker when it's actually, in fact, in pretty good shape still.
Now, as you see, Joe played the Infinity Gauntlet last round, opted to bring back the Dark Beast in this round. Now, as you can see through the head's eye or bird's eye view we have, Joe does have a Beast negate. So, as you can see, that Gauntlet just truly changing this game here, maybe even in Joe's favor. Now, Nick looking like he's getting down to the wire with his deck. He's really going to have to hope that a couple big things fall his way in the next little moment or two. Can EFL push through?
I mean, that's what's interesting about Joe resurrecting that negate, and why he doesn't like saying that Scarlet Witch negate is because that stops him from being able to negate the bonus card that Joan of Arc has, because that's got to be one of his primary concerns. Oof, and he's got the
opponent
AI,
discard.
he's got 2 of them to get rid of the 11, so
that's a targeted base discard from Wicked Witch, and then of course the wonderful opponent discard from Scarlet Witch.
I think given the fact that the negate's placed, if I were Joe, I would look to play and venture 2, immediately throw the 11 as soon as you can, defend the first one, throw the 11, and then whatever happens after. Yeah.
Opting to get rid of the, I'm assuming 11 at the time, now using the negate right away. Great fact that Nick had initiative.
I guess this could work, but
Joe
he's still losing the 11 to the
script, hoping that that negate was the reason he could potentially get that 11 through now as a kill shot. Now, if I were Nick, we're probably trying to discard that 11. Now, of course, playing the Joan 4, not being dangerous as there's no more negates on Joe's side. He will get the 2 actions. And, of course, that being a targeted
that
base
could be an
discard.
acrobatics, though, and then that would protect the 11 if he chooses to defend with the Snake Marsden. That's my...
What acro?
Snake Marsden?
He already played it.
Oh, he already played that? Okay. So, yeah, so if that's the case, then that would be my only concern about this, right?
And as you can see, Joe reaching again.
Oh, he's got that one.
Oh, avoid special. Always a tricky card. I do believe, Tyler, you actually started to initiate this in Hell's Kitchen later on with your Asclepion ideas. Now, what does that card exactly say, Tyler?
So that's in avoid a special card attack and remove a special card hit at the same time, which allows you to draw a card. It's essentially an avoid, draw, remove all at once.
Which, of course, with that Asclepion home base, really activating it very well. Joe really looking like he's really leaned into the Asclepion build. Now, of course, looks like it's incredibly paying off with this speed bump approach that he's taken.
You're seeing exactly why Asclepion is a great battle site, especially towards the late game, because it will slowly heal your characters over time while you distribute damage to your opponents. So even when you end up in an even situation with the same amount of characters, you tend to have a lot more healthy characters than your opponent does.
So as you can see, Joe's starting to try to decide what to do here. He might be thinking that 11 will automatically go through. However, you must recall all the cards your opponent has played, and Nick does have several cards, including an avoid, still in his battle site. Using the 1/6 from Doctor Strange, 6 for a 6, that's the most value you're going to get out of that card. Follow-up coming in this scenario. Looks like a multi-3. Avoided very easily with that power card. Jockeying back now. I wonder if Nick, realizing that he needed that power card to fuel his teamwork. No, he did not.
Oh.
Here is that big teamwork coming back at Joe. Joe reaching into Hell's Kitchen, knowing he's used almost everything.
Oh, he still has an infiltration.
An amazing infiltration DB style card, eliminating all follow-up attacks. Here's that big 11. I'm assuming now he's going to have...
The only fighting?
Only fighting. Great.
That's a big card at this point.
Great CD special to pull out of the battle site right now to avoid that big 11 that Joe really thought was just going to power through.
Let's look at a raw 6, just a 6 any power.
6 any power being played across, single action.
That could be an 8 to defend.
Joe now trying for the KO.
Yeah.
And
that would be the
there's that
Spider-Man avoid.
big AD we were mentioning.
That's the
That
AG.
big AG
Yeah.
we were mentioning, that big avoid from Spider-Man. Now, of course, Nick has used almost everything from his bugle at this point in time. I truly feel between both of them, this might actually be deck versus deck from here on out. Of course, a lot of hits on a lot of characters. These next few rounds, depending on who can get the KO shots in, will probably determine the game. Great game, both players. Both playing their deck styles, their actions, and playing towards what they think is their win conditions. Let's see who can pull this out.
That's exactly what I was just going to say, is the fact that it's very interesting to see Joe's Infinity Gauntlet being a late game thing and his deck healing the way it's supposed to, while Nick's has got his bonus in play late game. He's distributed and spread out the damage the way he's supposed to, so it's it's very interesting. The other thing about Joe's thing is that Time Traveler card is still playable even with the character being dead, so he can just discard that to get a free 10 venture.
Both of them, 2 venture. They have been going at each other all game. Now, Joe electing not to use the Infinity Gauntlet as his deck is starting to dwindle. And I can imagine he's getting scared of actually defending certain things. Big 8 out there. Does Joe have the defense to stop this? He does not. Now, next hit will KO Cthulhu, as he is sitting at 18 points, returning the favor with his own...
No, I believe that's a
6.
7.
Returning his favor with his own large power card right at Joan of Arc for the KO. Joan getting KO'd. However, do recall that is in the Astral Plane EFL, so both the Wicked Witch and Scarlet Witch are still provided that +2 bonus, which I imagine is being played right now towards his opponent. Now, Joe being down to his last character, of course, that character having the Infinity Gauntlet on them will be able to still bring back characters. Now, Nick trying desperately to get that KO pressure as well as KO on his final character. Let's see what can happen here. KO shot brought across the board by Joe. Small power card attack on the Wicked Witch.
Since he already played his 8, it's paramount to stack hits. I would be taking as much as you can, knowing your Doctor Strange is your backup 8, and look to retaliate with the same cards. Exactly what Nick just did. That's what you should be doing.
Now, of course, in this particular situation, if Scarlet Witch were to be KO'd, the round would end immediately, as Nick does not have any frontline characters remaining.
Actually, it wouldn't end right now. He would still get a turn to pass, and if he did have a card that was playable still.
I don't think so. I think once your frontline's dead, it's over. New rules.
Yeah, new rules is that you can run out of... as long as you still have playable actions, you can play even with no characters.
Ooh, opting for that big +10, using it in a pivotal moment to win this. Looks like a very interesting must-have round.
And I guess it makes the difference. Yeah, what did Joe discard there? And it was just a small one. Wow, that was important.
So Joe taking out 2 characters. And now, of course, being mono a mono, Joe does have the election to bring back additional characters, reaping 5 off the top. Now, as you can see, his power pack very small there. Yeah. So I don't know how much he's going to really want to pull that unless he thinks he can go for the win.
Yeah, I think he might have 1 resurrect that's possible. And also note that Nick lost his ability to get his bonus from Joan of Arc because Doctor Strange, I believe, would be considered male even in a progressive environment.
Now, of course, as we are here, just mono a mono characters. Oof, 2 discards coming off Nick's side. Now, Nick should still be an advantage here as his Doctor Strange is quite clean. And as you heard Tyler, he can take a few hits while returning the same damage at Mr. Fantastic, who will have to have additional cards over top of him.
Keep in mind, it is like Doctor Strange has eaten a 5 any power, though, due to the Cthulhu card.
Correct. So Doctor Strange is at 15 right now, and Nick must keep that in mind.
Now, I think I would have held that 1 and forced a defense with that a little bit later on, because if you can take the 1 early, unless you have multiple 1s in your deck, you've just lost the power card for the rest of the game now. So it's very important when you have 1-ofs on your power pack to make sure that you protect those.
And as you can see what Tyler mentioned, should he have thrown that intellect power card he just used to defend and then the 1, of course, he would have had no choice, Joe, that is, to defend that 1 with a larger card.
And keep in mind, Joe has a lot of low intellect. I'd be taking low blue all day and allowing him to defend with those. Like,
as you can see, another blue card. Tyler really speaking some strategy to you at home right now. Let's see if Nick can solve this puzzle and take this game.
I definitely would not have taken the multi. I would have taken the 4 and retaliated with the 4. That would have forced a concede once he starts having to use the power card that's one level higher. This is power pack stuff is like us OGs that play a lot of Overpower and have played. This is the stuff that becomes second nature because there's only so many sequences. It's like endgame in chess. There's only so many things to learn about this. But if you don't have a lot of experience in tournaments and you don't go this deep into games regularly, then it can be a challenge for a lot of players.
And of course, with not a lot of games going to Power Pack, often the experience and practice in it is not necessarily there, and you should study it very much like the endgame of chess. Now, Nick, playing on colors that are not for the KO. Of course, as you can see there, Joe trying desperately to sort of pull this game now has actually, in my mind, pulled this game even, as now Doctor Strange has one attack for the KO as well as Mr. Fantastic. I think he truly lost what advantage he had there in that last round.
Yeah, I think the trick now is you would resurrect, venture for the win, and force a hit on Doctor Strange that would KO him by being able to take extra damage using your temporary character as your sponge. Or your Fantastic as the sponge and your temporary character like Cthulhu to finish him off.
And the wrong timing for that to happen. Nick getting 4 discards. Of course, now only holding 4 cards in his hand. Joe looking here to really push. Now, Joe only having 5 himself, so only a 1 card advantage going into this battle. But, of course, Joe looking to take advantage of that.
That's surprising to me because I think I definitely would have bet for the win. But
and now they're starting to see who has what numbers. An 8 blocked with an 8. Now a KO card there. Joe must defend it.
Now he did have his 4 intellect played on Strange, so that's not the worst play. I think he just had to defend with a 5 as well, so that's
defended
good.
There. Low power card must be defended. Now this is a big play. Is this set?
No, it didn't KO him. Oh, Joe had 2 cards. That was the issue.
And of course that 7 would have been for the KO. However, Joe did have the defense for it.
Yeah, so in Power Pack, it's also who can take more damage. And that's taking that early multi-hit with them not fusing now is pretty devastating.
Oof. Tough again. 3 discards here now. Nick holding on to 5 cards.
So this is what I was saying.
Joe also with 3 discards, moving 5 cards even in this round now. This may be the round to watch.
Yeah, so early on, this is exactly what I was getting at by not throwing that 1 and 2. This would help distribute Nick's hands more. It's like he's short on power cards, so he's drawing the same amount of discards each hand. Having that 1 and 2 to spread things out would have made a giant difference.
Low power cards, they're jockeying, seeing who has more, seeing who has the bigger cards. And of course, here we go, big 7, defending with the 7. Joe realizing he did not have it. Joe having his 1. Nick really looking for a big hand here. Now, Joe really not being able to resurrect because he will just lose all of those power cards, as I believe now he's actually thrown a lot of the power cards into the dead pile that he can't use with this character, and now probably is limited to maybe a draw of 8 to 10 cards. I find to sacrifice half of those for Infinity Gauntlet might just not be the way. Joe might just be trying to get that better draw and get that KO. At this point, both of them just going for the KO method of win.
Especially if there's a chance you get unlucky and grind off all your 8s or something, and that would be devastating. That's something even the extra... I mean, the extra hits probably still would make a difference, though, because you could take 1 extra hit to... As long as Nick didn't venture for the win to let Strange die, he would still be okay.
Both of them jockeying back and forth. Of course, having a card advantage on one hand doesn't fall to card advantage on the next.
Yeah, and this is a typical Power Pack war at this point.
Slow venture being pushed both ways.
So this is where it can get difficult for players because you have to be paying attention to discards. You have to be paying...
I imagine time creeping up, probably getting last hand called very shortly.
Yeah, it may have already been called at this point. They might just be playing really fast because this was a fairly good game.
Great game by both competitors. This is the type of overpower game you really enjoy seeing. Both
Yeah.
decks pulling off what they're trying to pull off, and it's just an.
Oh, he's grinding.
He's grinding the 5.
That was a good grind for him. He didn't lose anything crucial. He should still have copies of all those power cards left, and this is exactly what he needs to do. He should have just done this sooner and ventured higher, and the game would have been over a long time ago.
And of course, what Tyler referencing, he's going to be able to allow Fantastic to be KO'd and still throw all remaining power cards at Doctor Strange. This should be the finale, folks.
Yep. And Nick realizes the writing's on the wall, and great game played by both players. I think that was, you saw how evenly matched it was. It went to power pack for that reason, because it just came down to that real tight advantage at the end.
Great game, both very focused. They're both pointing to the Cthulhu card as if it had a major sway, which it did in this game. However, if I were Nick, I think the one moment I would look back on this is that round where 2 of your characters got KO'd as well as losing the venture. Might have been a situation where you placed and ran as you saw your opponent was nowhere close to winning the game, and you might have just wanted to war chest up knowing you had more characters than they did. But of course, easier said than done when you're watching from the booth. Great game, commentator. Looks like you pulled it out, showing everybody you know how to play this game of Overpower. And great game, Nick. Just grinding that right to the end with great play through his BQ special. And of course, just solid overall play, even noticing the Protection of St. Michael secondary text in one battle. Great focus, great play, and I can imagine you're going to see these opponents potentially later in the tournament. But of course, we will see. Thank you for joining us round 5. Tyler, any final strategic insight on the game?
I think both players played this really well. I think Nick did a great job considering he lost so much momentum early on with having to concede that many times in a row just to kind of set up and avoid. Other than some like small power pack, standard stuff. And again, this is speaking from like the backseat of, the backseat overpower player here. So there may have been other reasons for Nick doing what he did. But other than that, I think they both played a great game. And this was one of the sharpest games we've seen so far this tournament.
Yeah, very well played. Thank you again for joining us. This has been round 5 in Columbus, the OP Cup. Thank you, Tyler, for joining me. You will see us in round 6.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.